Welcome to This Week in Wrestling History.
All right, episode 16. We're looking at Survivor Series 1991.
We're not starting it this way.
Why?
Because what an awful cold open we have here like this. All right, I guess this is
yeah.
how we're doing it now. All right.
I forgot about that. I'm not used to doing this.
All right. So welcome everyone to This Week in Wrestling History with the cold open.
It works.
It does. That's us.
You wouldn't be listening to us if you didn't know who we were and what we were doing by now.
Indeed.
So, like I said, we're doing Survivor Series
91.
1991. This was a thing.
Yeah. Before we jump into that, anything in this week that we should actually cover real quick? Touch on anything? I mean,
The awful Raw that just happened.
Raw was awful. SmackDown was fine, it sounded like.
SmackDown. The first segment of SmackDown was better than all 3 hours of Raw.
Yeah. So I need to go back and watch that. The Man versus Charlotte in a promo.
Yeah, that was a good promo. Becky is definitely a tweener now.
We should actually probably touch on like the best thing that happened in the wrestling world this week on Monday. The Edge and Cena show is back.
Yes, the Edge and Cena show that reeks of awesomeness. And yeah, it's something.
I could go with every episode of that. Christian waking up doing the scream thing and Cena rolling over there. Hey, Pooh Bear.
The fact that he said Pooh Bear 3 different times.
Right.
Like, it was amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that about sums up this week in wrestling for everyone real quick. For modern day, go watch the new episodes of The Edge and Christian show that totally reeks of awesomeness on the WWE Network.
Yeah.
Skip Raw. Watch at least the first segment of SmackDown.
Yeah. Nothing else really happened, but jumping into Survivor Series 91, this was overall not really anything special until like midway through the card.
Yeah, in fact, this was actually overall not good, I would say.
No, there was really only 2 matches that were anywhere decent or worth watching on this card.
Right. And even the ones that were worth watching, not really worth watching the whole thing for, I would say.
No. Really, the only thing that's worth it on this pay-per-view is the interactions between Heenan and Gorilla.
Bobby Heenan's always going to probably be the selling point for most things in this era. So just to set this up a little bit more, if you listen to our podcast on SummerSlam 91, which was really, really amazing, this is actually the follow-up pay-per-view to that.
Yeah, because this was back before they had the monthly pay-per-views.
Right, exactly. This is back in the day where we just had the big 4.
Yep, and everything was, Superstars and...
Pretty much Superstars and...
In Your House.
No, In Your House was far from existing yet. It was Superstars, Main Event. Wow. No, Saturday Night Main Event didn't exist at this point in time. There was a Sunday show on USA Network during the days.
Yes.
It was...
I don't remember.
It was
the
like
name of it.
US... And it was like something American branded. I don't fully remember, but... So... Actually, I take it back. There wasn't 4 pay-per-views this year. There were 5, which is one of the big complaints about this event, actually. This Tuesday in Texas.
That's right.
Was a pay-per-view less than a week after this pay-per-view.
Yeah, it literally because this Survivor Series was on a Wednesday.
It was on the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving.
And then Tuesday in Texas was the Tuesday following Thanksgiving.
Correct. So 6 days later, they had another pay-per-view, which honestly, they ended up using this event to kind of sell, which took away a lot of the oomph from this because so much of it ended up kind of getting shunted off to the following Tuesday.
Yeah. And a lot of the storylines came to a screeching halt on the following Tuesday.
Yeah. So... All right. We're not actually going to get into this Tuesday in Texas because it's a whole nother card. We're just going to stick to Survivor Series 91 here. So it is coming off the heels of SummerSlam, kind of, sort of, I guess.
Yeah, kind of, sort of. There was a couple of pretty decent... Well, I mean, the biggest thing was coming out of SummerSlam, Sergeant Slaughter's face turn.
Yeah, so Sergeant Slaughter is now a good guy. He came out of SummerSlam having finally kind of put that whole thing to rest of being a traitor. It was followed up with some of the sappiest promo vignette clips I had ever seen, with Hacksaw Jim Duggan kind of being his mentor on coming back to the good old US of A. Like the biggest one I remember was Sarge being taken around to like different national monuments, kind of like crying with a tear in his eye, saying, "I want my country back." And one of the things Jim Duggan did was he took him to like an elementary school so he could say the Pledge of Allegiance with the class. And it was just so hokey where, like, did you really forget like how to say the Pledge of Allegiance while you were being a turncoat? I feel like they could have gone with a little bit more mature of an angle on this whole thing and been okay.
However, we are in the 90s, so it makes sense.
Yeah, this was kind of their descent into the job-based things and a lot less nuance and just not the strongest time for characters.
All right, so first match.
Yeah, first match is our regular 4-on-4 Survivor Series elimination match, and it featured...
By the way, there's 4 of those on this card and only 1 singles match.
Right, so this was still back in... So last week, we complained kind of about these Survivor Series matches existing in the modern day. Back in this day, they were actually fine because they were actually used more purposefully and progressed storylines. Whereas our most recent Survivor Series that happened, where it was Raw versus SmackDown, not a whole lot really happened there.
No, because it's just Raw versus SmackDown.
Yeah, it's Raw versus SmackDown, and it is what it is. So anyways, our first match is featuring the Mountie, Ric Flair, Ted DiBiase, and the Warlord.
So 2 of those I'm okay with seeing.
2 of those, really great. One of those is meh, and one of them is ugh.
Yeah. So they're facing Bret Hart,
The British Bulldog,
Roddy Piper,
and Virgil.
So again, 3 of those I'm okay with seeing.
And one of those, well, see, and I'm a little bit more like 2 of those I'm quite good with. One of those being and one of those being ugh.
So this was kind of in the midst of Ric Flair bringing over, quote unquote, the WCW belt.
Right. So Ric Flair had appeared at SummerSlam but didn't have a match. And now Survivor Series is... I don't know if this was actually his first match in the WWF, but if not the first, very close to the first.
Yeah. And what's funny is they're doing this whole thing where he comes over with the WCW belt.
The quote... They never call it that. They never call it the NWA belt. It is, quote, just the real world championship.
Yep. However... Well, and what they're doing with it is he's holding it up and he's like, "See, I'm the real world champion," blah, blah, like trying to put himself over and above Hulk Hogan. But what they're doing on TV is they're blurring the title out.
Yeah, it's being censored. So funny thing I actually found out, what he's holding up there, not actually the big gold belt from NWA/WCW.
It's not. At first, when he first came over, it was the big gold
Right.
belt. And while he had that big gold belt, WCW introduced their new styled belt
Yep.
that would actually then be used for quite some time, up until I think either 94 or 96.
94, I believe.
Then they got the big gold belt back from Rick.
Yep.
And then they used the other belt as the international title.
Yes. The WCW's title picture gets very weird at this point in time because of all this stuff, and maybe we'll do a show on just like the weird history of certain titles. Because I think the WCW International title might be a good one to cover.
Yeah.
But anyways.
So what's funny is when he's holding this belt up during this, as it's like the main plate in the middle is blurred out, as he turns, it has a WWF logo on the side of it.
So do you know what it actually was?
Wasn't it one of the tag belts?
Correct. It was one of the tag belts, which, do you know how confusing it must have been to be there in person and be like, why is Ric Flair holding up one of the tag titles?
Especially because later on, the tag team champions come out with both of the belts.
Right. Like, you're like, what? Huh? When did, what? Okay, whatever. So it's one of those things that only makes sense to the people at home, but the
Right.
people in the arena must be like, "Huh?
Why is he holding that one?
Did Hawk or Animal get hurt and Ric Flair filled in for them?" Which now I only want to go see an old NWA tape of Flair in the Road Warriors face paint.
Yeah, right. So this match was it was okay.
It had some really good moments. It had some not so great moments, but the not so great moments were fine.
So the biggest thing that I always forget about this,
This era,
Ric Flair's always been really good.
yes,
I always forget how good DiBiase actually is.
yeah, that's definitely. This match is almost full of people. Okay, this match is full of. This match has two people, one on each side, that it's almost borderline criminal that they never held the world title.
Yeah, those being DiBiase and Roddy Piper.
Correct.
Because I always forget how good Piper was.
They're both so strong, not only as just they're both great on the mic, but they're also very, very good in the ring.
And kind of going back to you saying, Piper never held the title. I actually read an article where the reason he never held the title is because he told Vince he didn't want one.
Which, be that as it may, they could have made so much money off of that. I mean, especially in the early 80s around WrestleMania 1, Piper
Yeah.
was so hated.
Yeah.
People just hated him. They could have drawn really good money, but I mean, I get it.
His claim was that he thought that he could carry a story. He thought he was good enough to carry a story, carry a feud without a title being involved to elevate it to that next level.
Which I don't necessarily disagree.
I mean, I don't think he's wrong.
He could definitely carry a story by himself without the title. It wasn't necessary, but I think it could have added even more. Like,
Oh, definitely.
which didn't need it, but if they had, it would have been crazy amounts.
Yeah. But, either way, Piper and DiBiase both very, very good, and I would say arguably underrated.
Definitely. And so let's get to the parts of this match real quick, just being Virgil and Warlord. They
Ugh.
are definitely the weakest parts of each of their respective teams. But if you're going to have those guys in a match, the Survivor Series 4-on-4 match is the time to have them.
Especially with the people that they're working with.
Right. If you have Bret Hart, Roddy Piper, and Davey Boy Smith kind of carrying Virgil, that's pretty okay.
Yeah, and if you have Flair, DiBiase, and even the Mountie carrying Warlord,
Yeah, Mountie, while the character was super annoying and not great, Jacques Rougeau himself, decent hand in the ring.
yeah.
So, and the guy was able to generate a lot of heat. He was really unliked at the time for various reasons. So, they filled their roles really well. Virgil is kind of on the end of being anything because
Relevant.
remember, as we said back at SummerSlam, the crowd was so behind Virgil. He was like really, really over as a face. At this point in time, that ran about its limit, but it was still good enough.
Yeah. What it boils down to out of this match, I think, is I would have much rather had just seen a tag match with Piper and Bret Hart against Flair and DiBiase.
That would have been absolutely amazing. Yes. Unfortunately, Survivor Series not really in the cards.
But still,
But yeah, overall, a really solid match. It gets a little schmazzy at the end.
it was fun to watch.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to go back and see an old school Survivor Series match. That this would be one of the ones I would tell you to go back and watch.
Exactly. If you want to see a kind of like great Survivor Series match, which at their times are a little bit tricky to pull off and make really, really good, this one was really pretty good.
Yeah. All right. So next match is
So next one is one I definitely have a lot to say about. This was kind of what we were touching on earlier. It was Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Sergeant Slaughter, Texas Tornado and Tito Santana
Ugh.
versus the team of the Berserker, Colonel Mustafa, Hercules, and Skinner. Yeah, so
Was General Adnan not in this one?
No, he was definitely not. General Adnan, he was in the SummerSlam match, wasn't he?
He was.
Which made absolutely no sense for him to be in.
So is he just Mustafa's valet for this one?
Yeah, essentially. And at this SummerSlam, they didn't allow valets at ringside, so I think he walked out and walked right back real quick.
Yeah, I think the only one that actually spent any time out was was it Sensational Sherry
Correct.
with DiBiase?
Correct.
She was out for all of maybe 5 minutes and then got sent to the back.
She was out for a little bit of sexual assault and then kicked to the back.
Yep.
Which, man, it's a real different day and age when we were watching this. So going back to that first match real quick, Sensational Sherry gets involved in the match. She hooks Piper's leg or something. So Piper drags her into the ring and gives her a big old smooch, which in this day and age, the good guy doing that is just a little, ugh.
Yeah. We'll get to another part where the good guy does something that I kind of tilted my head at. But anyway.
So this match of kind of your typical white meat baby faces at this point in time of Texas Tornado, El Matador, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and Sergeant Slaughter in the clean sweep over Mustafa, Hercules, Skinner, and the Berserker.
Yeah, it was something. I don't know how to react to Kerry Von Erich coming out as Texas Tornado, to be called Texas Tornado, wearing a jacket with his name on the back of
That
it.
says Kerry on the back. And so this is actually something, again, we talked about during the SummerSlam thing, was Texas Tornado, the Dragon, and British Bulldog were all only called by those names.
And El Matador, too.
And yeah, but say now we can add El Matador, Tito Santana, to the list of, hey, you're a brand new person. Your past as the Intercontinental Champion does not exist.
Which makes zero sense.
And someone apparently forgot to tell Gorilla Monsoon anyways.
Because he's calling them all by their real names throughout the entire matches. And even the ring announcer, what's his name?
Howard Finkel.
Even calls them at the end of the match El Matador, Tito Santana, and Kerry the Texas Tornado Von Erich.
Yeah. Someone apparently didn't quite get the memo from Vince, or however they were trying to play it, didn't quite work out.
Yeah. I did not like this match.
So this match wasn't great. And so, like we said, it was a clean sweep by the good guys, which I guess was just kind of there to give the crowd a, oh, yay type thing. So here's my problem with that. This was coming, again, as we were saying at the start of the show, off the heels of Sergeant Slaughter's face turn. He was just finished up being the American turncoat. He was now trying to, quote unquote, he wants his country back. He wants to be a good guy again. He realized the error of his ways. This was just kind of like a, yay, okay, moving on.
Yeah.
Where,
hey, he's a good guy again. Everybody's okay with him.
and that's it. And
on to the next feud.
Yeah, well, but they didn't even do that. They didn't go on to another feud with Sergeant Slaughter. I think he essentially pseudo-retired from here and then kind of showed back up in the Attitude Era as the commissioner.
Huh.
So let me do a little bit of fantasy booking here, if you will, for a minute. And they went from a guy with absolutely nuclear heat to, literally the guy was getting death threats as the American turncoat because we were in the middle of the Iraqi war.
Which, makes sense compared to, Colonel Mustafa, his entire career as the Iron Sheik.
Right. So here's what I would have done. Good guys come out. Everyone really wants to see Sergeant Slaughter get his revenge on Colonel Mustafa, kind of once and for all, show him what for.
Right.
First off, Mustafa was the first guy eliminated in the match. You're kind of giving away the big thing everyone wants to see right off the bat.
Yeah.
So what I would have done is have the bad guys cheat a couple times and probably have it be cheating the same way every time to, okay, let's eliminate El Matador. Let's eliminate Tito's Kerry Von Erich. So now we're down 2-on-4. Okay. Looking bad for the good guys here. we're still kind of like using that sympathy that Sergeant Slaughter has now been building up over the months with his redemption thing. Have the heels trying to do that sneaky, whatever they had been doing to eliminate the first two guys, they go to try to do it to Jim Duggan. Maybe it's like some sort of cheap shot. Have Sergeant Slaughter come in and take the shot instead. Like, oh, he actually put himself on the line now for the good old USA guy, Jim Duggan.
He took the bullet for him.
Exactly. Have him literally take the bullet. Looks like the bad guys are going to get the pin again, and it's going to come down to 4-on-1. No, Sergeant Slaughter somehow manages to kick out. Yay. Everyone's happy about that. The good guys start to make their comeback. You know, they take out Skinner and Barbarian, or Skinner and Hercules, or whoever.
Mm-hmm.
Two of them, not Mustafa. Keeping Mustafa and Sergeant Slaughter a little bit separated here. Then, once it's down to like 2-on-2, the bad guys once again, actually no, let's knock them all out. We'll have them come down to Mustafa. So it's Duggan and Slaughter versus Mustafa. However, let's say Duggan just eliminated Hercules. On the way out, they're about to do whatever cheap shot they did to the first two good guys to Slaughter. Hacksaw now knocks Slaughter out of the way, kind of returns that favor, takes the cheap shot, and gets eliminated.
And now we essentially have a singles match between Mustafa and
Slaughter. Yeah, now we're down to the match everyone actually wants to see. Now we've built up even more like sympathy for Sergeant Slaughter. We've built up Jim Duggan a little bit more here, really kind of showing that, hey, these two guys have each other's backs. They're really in it. At the end of this whole thing, you can have Sergeant Slaughter coming out still with a decent amount of crowd reaction that you can then use on some other bad guy you want to build up after this whole thing.
Right. I think it would have been a lot better if it had played out that way, especially because after this, nothing happened.
Right. This match pretty much was there just to give the fans something to cheer. You could have done that and still kind of held on to some of that. I don't know what term. Normally you call it heat when it's the bad guys getting the reaction. Whatever kind of investment the fans had in the
Right.
character, you could have kept some of that instead of kind of flushing it all, which I feel like this match kind of did. You could have held on to some of that, taken it forward, and then dumped it onto some bad guy that you really wanted to get over as another bad guy.
Which at this point, there was plenty of them that could have used that.
Right. It would have been like, it wouldn't have been a main event guy probably, but you could have definitely built up some undercard bad guy and really gotten him over pretty good at like the IC level.
Yeah.
All right, that was that match.
All right, next one is the only singles match on the card,
Yup.
and it's Hulk Hogan putting the WWF title on the line against The Undertaker.
Yes.
Now, mind you, Undertaker has been in the WWF for 1 year at this point.
Right. This was actually his 1 year anniversary. He first showed up at the 1990 Survivor Series.
And really the big historical thing with this
And
card,
really, honestly, the reason that we picked this card to even cover.
it was the first WWF title win for The Undertaker.
Right. So first time ever Undertaker got his hands on some gold, which 1 year into being with the company,
Back then, that was a big deal.
that was definitely big, especially off Hulk Hogan.
Right. Granted, he held it for 6 days because he lost it at Tuesday in Texas.
Yep. So this unfortunately was kind of a transitional championship reign, and really the entire point of it was Undertaker would win the match, get the title, hold it for 6 days, because we'll get into the shenanigans that caused the end of the match, but there were shenanigans in this match, there were shenanigans in the rematch, so they just took the title, held it up vacant, and made it so that the winner of the 1992 Royal Rumble became the new WWF champion, which happened to be
Ric Flair.
So
This seemed like a very long and drawn-out way just to get the title on Flair.
it was a long, drawn-out way to get the title off of Flair without Hogan having to drop the belt to him,
Yes.
which, crazily enough, was a match a lot of people wanted to see.
Shocking that the biggest guy in one federation
Right.
and the biggest guy who jumped ship from another federation to this one.
I was about to say, we actually just covered, 2 weeks ago now, Flair got a trophy at Clash of the Champions for being Wrestler of the Decade from PWI Magazine.
Right. Like,
So
If-
literally, your 80s poster child of NWA and your poster child of 80s WWF.
why would you not put them in a match together?
That would have been so much money.
But again, hindsight being 2020 and them not knowing really what they're doing back then.
Right. Or it could have literally been the WWF versus WCW invasion angle a decade before it actually happened.
Which probably would have been better.
Oh, by far it would have. If you had built it where, yes, obviously we're up in New York, we're in the WWF, Vince is going to play WCW, the NWA is the bad guy, but if you do it that he's the bad guy with just enough of a wink and the nod that he's almost representing the NWA still, the WCW still,
Yeah.
and allow all of those fans to rally behind their guy, it would have been nuts.
Especially for, if they had planned this out just a little bit sooner, you go down to Texas and you have Hogan versus Flair in Texas,
Right. In
You're-
anywhere in the South, really.
you're going to have a very split crowd.
Yes. I mean, Florida actually probably would have been another great place to do it
Yeah.
because Hogan spent time in Florida way back in the day, but
Yeah.
Alas.
Right. So we ended up with Undertaker winning his first WWF title, which was the kind of the launching point of his career.
Right. He had been kind of this undead monster until this point in time, and he was starting to gain a lot of steam.
Yeah, he had been built up as, at this point, he was arguably one of the biggest heels in WWF.
Yeah, he was pretty despicable. People especially hated Paul Bearer. They hated clocking people with the urn.
And there was this mystique with The Undertaker because, the guy took a couple chair shots, days before the match?
Yeah, just no-sold the heck out of him.
Yeah, took chair shots from Piper and Macho on the shoulders and just stared at them both. And Vince McMahon was like, "Oh man, oh no, he didn't even flinch."
Yeah.
They had him built up relatively well at this point. I would say arguably the best of his career up until probably the Attitude Era.
Definitely. The remainder of the mid-90s were not nearly as great to The Undertaker as this point in time. He was definitely this guy's like a walking zombie. He's a walking corpse because nothing apparently hurts him.
Yeah. Which back then was a cool gimmick. His entrance was also a lot shorter back then.
Yeah, it was a lot shorter and a lot better.
But no, that match overall was a fun match to watch.
Yeah, so the end of that match is Ric Flair comes out, distracts Hogan a little bit. Then Paul Bearer kind of gets into things and distracts the ref. And we have, so during the match beforehand, we have a tombstone on Hulk Hogan that he just completely no-sells.
Yep, just stands
Tombstone
right up.
pops right up and gives him the ooh point.
The point with the what you gonna do, brother?
Yep. And then the finish is Flair slides a steel chair into the ring, and we have a tombstone on the chair.
Yep, and apparently Hogan actually got a little stinger from that.
Yeah, so Undertaker did a really great job of protecting Hogan from actually getting dropped on his head on the chair with the tombstone, but apparently he did almost a little bit too good of a job and accidentally kind of kneed him in the side of the neck, side of the head, and gave him a bit of a, stinger there. There was a rematch scheduled between Hogan and Undertaker at Tuesday in Texas, so 6 days later, which Hogan was able to be in just fine, so
Right.
nothing serious, but after the match, you definitely see Hogan kind of getting out of the ring pretty slowly, and apparently that's a little bit more real than people had expected it to be.
Well, and especially at this point, the crowd was kind of watching this like, what just happened? Like the Undertaker just won the belt and Hogan's defeated.
Yeah, it was almost comparable to the streak ending.
Yeah, because at this point you have, and again, good old Bobby Heenan screaming in our ears, Hulkamania's dead. All the children are going to be crying, Hulkamania's dead. It was definitely a big deal at this point. Because, I mean,
Very much so.
really up until now, Hogan hadn't really... He had lost, but...
He never lost this cleanly is the thing.
Right.
So if you go back and watch, I want to say WrestleMania 5 when it was him versus Ultimate Warrior, right after the 3 count, he's kicking out. And then he pops right back up and takes the belt and then hands it to Warrior.
Yeah, at this point, he gets the 3 count, doesn't kick out,
Yeah,
And
he's
stay-
just down.
and stays on his back well past The Undertaker walking to the back
Yeah.
and people coming out to check on Hogan because he hasn't moved.
Right. So it was definitely during the era of Hogan doesn't lose, and if he does, it's just by the skin of his teeth type thing.
Right.
So, and again, Hogan was not a small guy by any means.
No.
Undertaker's bigger than he is, though.
Yeah, it was one of those things where they ended up doing the stare down at the beginning of the match, and Hogan actually has to look up at The Undertaker.
Yeah. And honestly, though, I think we're actually starting to hit the point in time where people are starting to get a little bit tired of the Hulk Hogan thing.
Which would make sense because, a couple years later, he disappears and goes to
WCW.
yeah.
Yep. And if you kind of pay attention to the match, once the match gets going and Undertaker stops doing his slow kind of stalking after someone thing and starts moving around a bit, and he's really moving around and showing just how fast and how hard he can hit the ropes and come running off with that jumping clothesline he
The
does.
jumping clothesline, ducking underneath Hogan's clothesline.
Yeah, and really starts moving around in the ring and kind of hitting those those upward thrusts he
Yeah.
does. People are kind of getting behind that.
Because it was different.
It was different, and it was a guy that size moving that fast.
In WWF, you didn't have that. All the big guys would lumber around.
All the big guys were giants.
Yeah, you would have them lumbering around, doing the power moves, dropping people on their heads, and that kind of stuff. Like, you left the running around and the quick spots to Bret Hart, to Mr. Perfect.
Right, and those guys definitely weren't being featured at this point in time. I mean, think about the smallest guy in the main event scene really was Ultimate Warrior.
Right.
He's not remotely small. Previously the guys, so let's go 3 main, quote unquote, main challengers back for Hogan were Sergeant Slaughter, Ultimate Warrior, Earthquake.
Earthquake is by no means tiny.
He's almost 400, if not over 400,
I would think Slaughter is a little bit smaller than Warrior.
but still a solid 280 probably, because
Right.
he's a big dude.
And then you have Warrior, who's ripped out of his mind.
Right. He ran around a lot and did some diving tackles, but wasn't doing
But that lasted.
it wasn't necessarily athletic really. There was almost no finesse to it. It was more just kinetic energy.
Yeah, and it lasted all of
A minute and a half.
right, because he'd be tired and sweating his ass
Yeah, he'd
off.
blow himself up and be done in a minute and a half. He would blow himself up running to the ring sometimes, and
Yeah.
when it's time to actually do anything, I got a tackle and a press slam and a big splash at me, and we're going home.
Yep. Whereas then you have The Undertaker, who's doing all of his moves all of the time.
And
At a
going for a
fast
solid
pace.
10, 15, 20-minute match. Yeah.
So it was at that point where it was people
Yeah.
were starting to,
It was
to notice it.
It was slowly starting to change where we're starting to be like, okay, we can do a little bit more here.
And I want to say shortly after this, Taker turns face because doesn't he help Macho against Jake the Snake?
I believe he
does
No,
something.
he actually
He does something against Jake the Snake because wasn't Jake his first WrestleMania?
I'm trying to remember. Cuz no, he actually set up Ultimate Warrior for that. Yes, that's what it was. So what happened was he was actually kind of allied with Jake the Snake against Ultimate Warrior, and they messed with Ultimate Warrior for WrestleMania. I think WrestleMania? No, because WrestleMania was Ultimate Warrior versus Sergeant Slaughter, and that's where he dropped the belt. No, sorry. Wow. This point in time was so far back. Okay. It was Ultimate Warrior versus Sergeant Slaughter at Royal Rumble 1991. That's where Slaughter got the belt. Slaughter drops the belt to Hogan at WrestleMania. So, yeah, go for it. Fill me in here. I clearly can't remember.
Taker loses the belt at Tuesday in Texas. Moving on to February of 92, Undertaker is allied with Jake the Snake.
Yep.
Jake tried to attack Miss Elizabeth with his steel chair when Taker stopped him.
Okay, so So I knew Taker and Jake were allied for a little while, and I think that was against
It was probably just
Warrior.
before this.
I think that was against Warrior probably at SummerSlam. No, because at SummerSlam it was Hogan and Warrior versus
So this
the
is
Axis of Evil or whatever they call
this
them.
is when Undertaker turns face, and at Superstars, Roberts faces Undertaker on the funeral parlor set,
Gotcha.
and then he ends up turning into the good guy because then shortly after that he has his feud against Kamala and Giant Gonzalez.
Yes. Who can forget the great feuds of the Undertaker of the early 90s?
Ugh.
Yeah,
So-
he definitely fell out of favor for I don't know why he fell into these weird things, but he definitely fell into these weird gimmicky things.
But he ended up being a company man, and he's been rewarded very nicely.
Oh,
for it.
yes, he did very well for himself there. All right, I think that's about all we need to cover for that match.
Yeah.
All right, next match was actually pretty interesting in the grand scheme of things. Match itself was meh, but back to being a Survivor Series 4-on-4 match. We had the Nasty Boys and the Beverly Brothers versus the team of the Bushwhackers and the Rockers.
So, the first time of me watching this, I got very confused because I had no idea who the hell the Beverly Brothers were.
They were no one.
Fair enough. The only reason I knew the Nasty Boys was because he was showing up on Hulk Hogan's TV show all the time.
Oh, yeah, Brian Knobs was on there? Yeah,
Yep.
Brian Knobs.
Bushwhackers were insane and probably the worst gimmick of the 90s.
They were, so we covered this in the SummerSlam one, but they were so over with the fans, but yes, they were so awful.
And then you have the Rockers, who this is the beginning of the end.
Sure is. And I was a diehard Rockers fan back in the day. They were really what got me into wrestling.
So this was shortly before the barbershop incident, correct?
This is literally right before that event.
Because Shawn ends up leaving Marty Jannetty by himself in the match after he gets eliminated.
So let's talk about the match a little bit. We have the Bushwhackers. They end up both getting eliminated from their team. One of the Beverly Brothers ends up getting eliminated, but it was originally 4-on-2 with the two Rockers being left and all of the bad guys being left.
Yep.
I think Jannetty gets the pin for the good
Yes,
guys.
he
Yeah.
does.
Jannetty eliminates one of the Beverly Brothers, so then it's down to 3-on-2. And then we have a little bit of miscommunication.
Yeah, and something ends up happening where
So,
Shawn takes a punch or a kick or something.
so Shawn was setting up one of the Nasty Boys. I believe he was setting up Knobs for
Mhm.
something.
Yep.
And Marty picks up, I believe it was
The other,
Skaggs,
yeah,
and picks him up, and Skaggs' feet so Marty picks him up to body slam him, but his feet catch Shawn in the face. While the feet catch Shawn in the face and he's knocked off balance, Brian Knobs rolls him up and pins him.
yeah. So then afterwards, Jannetty and Shawn have choice words.
Yeah, Shawn
And-
gets pretty heated about this, like, what the F are you doing? You caused me to get eliminated here.
Yep, and then he takes his ball and goes home.
Well, he just got eliminated. He should be out of the ring.
So then it's Marty Jannetty by himself.
And of
against-
course, a 3-on-1 goes pretty poorly and he gets eliminated, and
And you have Bobby Heenan in the background. They never liked each other. They hate each other. They're not really friends.
So worse, we have Gorilla going, why did Shawn Michaels just leave his team and cause them to lose the whole thing? He just got up and left. Buddy, he got pinned.
Right.
He got rolled up and pinned. Apparently, in this whole thing, Gorilla didn't notice this. No one on the headset bothered to tell him. In a rather pivotal point for this story they're trying to tell of the Rockers breaking up,
Mm-hmm.
dude just missed the whole thing and miscalls it and is blaming this whole thing on Shawn, which, kind of lends itself to the story they're trying to tell anyways, but it's not what happened and is just confusing.
Right.
And if you're watching this, you're going, no, Shawn had every right, because your brain is going to tell you, no, he actually had a reason for being upset. He didn't just leave in a huff. He was eliminated, which is going to make you miss the point of, oh, there was actually just a miscommunication. Shawn's overreacting to the miscommunication. It was an accident. He didn't mean to do it. Shawn's trying to make it seem like he meant to.
And now everybody's missing what actually happened because Gorilla is missing his calls.
Exactly. You said you like this announced team a lot, and I get why. I don't like them because I don't like Gorilla.
But see, I mean, probably the best announced team that I had when I started listening or watching wrestling was Cole and Taz on SmackDown,
Yeah, so
or Don West and Mike Tenay on TNA.
okay, that's that's inappropriate levels of bad.
Right. So now, thankfully, we have Corey Graves and Renee Young.
Yes.
Cole is Cole, but then
Yeah,
you have
Cole is, at this point, he's fine. He's not great. He's neutral.
He's there.
He's there. It's fine. Whatever, moving on.
But then you have Bobby Heenan yelling stuff in the microphone and Gorilla going, "Oh, will you stop?"
Yeah, Heenan absolutely was gold. I guess you're taking Gorilla kind of as like a Cole/neutral,
Yeah.
whereas
Yeah.
I think Gorilla actively detracted from the product a bit. I'm sure people are going to disagree with me. It's just that's my feel on the whole thing. He didn't ever call moves properly if he bothered to call the moves.
I mean, I would take Heenan and Gorilla over Cole and Taz any day.
Well, I mean, given that, yes.
I would also take them over JBL and whoever he gets paired up with at any given day.
I'll take Joey Styles and Joel Gertner
Yeah.
over them.
Yeah, that's fair.
Anyways, okay. So that was
Last
our
match.
second to last match. Yep. Now we got our last match, which is a 3-on-3 Survivor Series match, because this was dumb being a 3-on-3 match, because what we were selling was Macho Man having been bit by a snake previously, and Jake the Snake being pseudo banned.
Right, from the match.
Right.
It
But
was supposed to be 4-on-4, then Macho gets bit. It's going to be 4-on-3, selling the handicap match, and then who was the president at this time?
Jack Tunney.
Jack Tunney goes, "Nope, Jake the Snake is not gonna be in the match. Now it's 3-on-3."
Right. But the whole reason that was done was just to put the Macho Man versus Jake match at Tuesday in Texas.
And I'll tell you, I did not like this match.
I'll tell you, I did not watch this match.
It wasn't good, because I mean,
So, hang on a second. Before we go that far, it was the Big Boss Man in the Legion of Doom versus Erwin R. Shyster in the natural disasters being Earthquake and Typhoon.
the only thing I could think of through 95% of this match was, isn't IRS that WCW guy who went to Syracuse?
And where was Typhoon's Stormtrooper mask? I distinctly recall this man normally being better known for wearing a purple glittery Stormtrooper mask.
Yeah, the match wasn't good, and the promo beforehand wasn't good because you got your standard Hawk. Well, let me tell you.
Yes, if you could play a drinking game where you just go on YouTube and find Hawk promos and find out how many start with "well," and
You'll be hammered after probably 3 promos.
right, like every promo he does where it starts with "well," because that's every damn Hawk promo is "well,"
Every single
one. It's the same effing promo every friggin' time.
Yeah, it was not a good match. It was not even fun to watch.
Yeah, I'll feel good that I didn't watch it. About to say, as we were saying, everyone in this match, with the exception of the Legion Doom, had another goofy promo in goofy gimmick in WCW.
Yeah.
So I think that was more fun to go through. So ignoring the Legion of Doom, who were just the Road Warriors, Legion of Doom, and that's just always been their thing. We had the Boss Man. What did he do in WCW? Well, he was the Guardian Angel.
Wasn't he also Bubba something?
Big Bubba Rogers, yes.
Yeah. Oh God.
All right, and then Erwin R. Shyster, better known as Mike Rotunda, a.k.a. Michael Wall Street.
Ugh. When they were trying to come off of the Wall Street movie too much.
Yep, they were doing the Michael Douglas movie, I guess. I don't know how you pulled that into a character, but sure.
Michael Douglas was in a movie about Wall Street. Let's name the guy Michael Wall Street.
Yeah. So better known for the Varsity Club, which, had one of the Steiners in it, and Sting, I think, even at one point in time.
Yeah.
And then we had the natural disasters. So Earthquake would go to WCW to be known as the Shark in the Dungeon of Doom.
Wasn't he also Golga?
Yeah, he would then later come back to the WWF as Golga in the Oddities and carry a Cartman doll around and wear a mask.
Wasn't at one point he was also the Gargoyle?
No.
He had something that was similar to Golga.
Oh, no. Okay, I was unaware of that one. And then we had Typhoon. Poor Typhoon.
Shockmaster. It's not Typhoon, it's Shockmaster.
Yeah, the Shockmaster. That's some quality programming there. I'm sure we will cover that at some point, but if you're a wrestling fan and you somehow have never seen the Shockmaster video yet, just go check on YouTube. Just search Shockmaster. It's going to be the first hit with millions of views as opposed to everything else.
Yeah, do yourself a favor and watch that. So, John Tenta, better known as Avalanche.
Oh, right. Wait, Avalanche?
He was Avalanche.
Where was Avalanche?
Earthquake Evans, the Gargoyle, Golga, John Tenta, Koto Tenta, Koto Tenzin, and the Shark.
And the Shark. Hang on. I got to figure out where Avalanche came from. That had to be his first WCW run. Yep. Okay. Oh, my.
Yeah. Just looking at some of these guys' past gimmicks was pretty amazing.
Oh, my. So he went to WCW, yes, first as Avalanche, and was part of the Three Faces of Fear with Kevin Sullivan.
Ooh.
Later aligned with Big Bubba Rogers to face Sting and Randy Savage, and then, yes, would eventually come back. So WWF threatened to sue that Avalanche was too close to Earthquake.
Of course.
So that's why he became the Shark in the Dungeon of Doom.
Ugh. Just some of the worst gimmicks.
Dungeon of Doom is something we're going to have to cover at some point, just on its own.
We could probably do a whole show on the Dungeon of Doom.
We could do like 2 episodes, 2 or 3 at least. Because there's something that ends up happening with the Dungeon of Doom that's something. Anyways. All right. That's Survivor Series 91.
Yep, the quick and dirty of it.
Yeah, the Undertaker first title reign, that's pretty notable. And definitely the Rockers split because I guess something became of one of those guys.
Yeah. Marty Jannetty, he didn't do anything.
Yeah. I mean,
if you're going to take anything out of that, it's not that Shawn Michaels is one of the best wrestlers in the history of wrestling.
No, it's the fact that now when you look at every tag team, you go, which one is the Jannetty? No one ever goes and goes, which one is the Shawn Michaels?
Right.
They go, which one is the Jannetty? So that's your takeaway.
Oh, man. So, yep, that was Survivor Series 1991. Time for plugs. You go first.
Time for plugs. We got the Facebook This Week in Wrestling History on Facebook.
Which, I apologize, I haven't been as active. I probably should do more, but,
Yeah, I think we'll make something out of that.
Yeah. Twitter, we have WrestleHistPod.
We have the email, wrestlinghistorypodcast@gmail.com.
And you can find us on Google Play Music, Spotify, and iTunes.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us this week. We're History.